Hi, I am Katie Melua and you're watching Muzo TV.
I really like the cover of your new album.
Thank you so much. I love that we have this here, that we can show it nice and big. I actually did it myself. This is a pandemic cover. Because when we finished the record, it was in March of 2020 and...
the madness began.
The madness began. I actually had to mix it virtually. So Cameron Craig, who was the mixing engineer, he did it in his studio and I was listening to it from my home.
You have to be kidding me.
Yeah, seriously.
Did it work?
It did work. I didn't think it would be possible, but we managed to do it. You know, and as you know, mixing is a very kind of detailed work.
Yes.
It's not easy. You really have to have such clear sound coming through. And I could hear it in real time. And then we delivered the album and the record company were very happy, but they said, but we need the album cover, you know, if we're going to stay on schedule. And I didn't want to delay the record.
Because of the cover?
Yeah, of course, but I didn't want to delay it anyway. You know, sometimes there was talk of people saying, well, a lot of artists thinking about delaying it. But I thought, no, you know, people will still want to hear music. And so the idea was that Rosie Matheson, who's a really brilliant photographer from England, she sent me her Mamiya camera. And I learned how to take film photography and this is it.
And this looks really good. How long did it take you to prepare the shot?
Well, it was a few days of just learning to use the camera. I've never used a film camera before. You know, I'm from the digital age, as everyone else is. And I got to learn. But you know what was fascinating? I got to learn like the dimensions that as a photographer you need to do. I mean, I've been photographed a lot in my career. It's part of the job. Not always something I enjoy. And actually, I always used to get very, I don't know, like feel awkward about having my picture taken. But doing photography myself, taking the cover myself, it taught me to actually like relax about it a lot more. It's very fascinating. It's a good way to get over the fear of photography.
So all the photographers out there, beware. Well,
I
maybe
think that
you've just found your new passion.
I think it can be a nice hobby. I have actually ordered a Pentax camera from Japan and it just arrived. So it has developed into a hobby. But no, I think the photographers out there are safe with their jobs.
Well, maybe you can take pictures on tours and then prepare some kind of an exhibition.
Well, I think, you know, let's take it one step at a time.
But there's an idea. Yes. Well, of course. But coming back to the album, it's going to be out really, really soon. And it's a great album. I know that people are going to be envious hearing it when they cannot listen to the record yet, but I guarantee you will be happy. All of you out there. Was it a difficult record to prepare?
You know what? Every record is actually really tough. It's really difficult because, you know, having this job is extraordinary. Being a musician, you know, not having to get another job it's kind of miraculous. And so I always feel like I have to really justify my position because of course everything changes and you have lots of great new talent coming into the industry, great new artists, lots of people that want to do it. And so I feel, you know, after nearly 20 years in the industry, I really have to have a very true artistic reason to do it. And that is not an easy thing. So it's been 4 years in the making and, you know, it's tough writing songs. It's also tough to find the right team who will help you realize it. It took a long time to find the right producer. And we finally did with a brilliant Leo Abrahams, who I'm very grateful for. And you know, now I speed through the rest of it in this conversation. But as you can imagine, it is tough. And I hope people can hear, you know, not too much of that toughness. Because in the end, I believe songs need to sound quite effortless. You know, like the final magic should be very spontaneous, in my opinion. But underneath, a lot of work goes into it.
This record is an album about love. But not only those idealized love from fairy tales.
It is indeed, because, I mean, I have sung songs in the past about the fairy tale love, you know, this love of kind of, that will last forever, that beautiful kind of early love. And I don't know, sometimes love doesn't go that way, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I wanted to actually talk about the different angles around love, about the ideas of how you might be able to make it last, even if that passion fades, that it's not the end of the world, And I wanted to do it respectfully and as honestly as I could. I'm now soon to be a 36-year-old woman. So, as my mum says, you have to look at the truth, with your eyes wide open.
Your mom says things like that. I'm wondering whether when you've got a record ready, you go to your family and let them listen to the album or not?
Actually,
of course, your brother works with you, so it's a
Yeah.
different situation, but the rest of the family.
My brother does indeed work with me. My mum is brilliant because she is still my biggest critic. So yeah,
Okay.
I think it's really important to go to her because I love hearing her very, precise instructions.
So you get a text message, for example, from your mother. Track number 1. Nicely sung, but...
I usually play it to her when I'm with her.
Okay.
Because then what's interesting is I can hear it from her perspective. This is a strange thing about record making where it's such an addictive process and it's so, it's so like desirable that you do lose sense of whether it's good or not. So actually listening to the record early before it's finished with close people that you really trust, whose, style and taste you kind of think is aligned with yours is very interesting because then you suddenly hear it more objectively and that's really important.
And you can trust the judgment.
Yeah, of course, it's very important that it's someone you do trust.
So when you're doing an album, when you're recording an album, you might lose your perspective, as you're saying. But, a record, for me, is really alive when it resonates with people.
Yeah, I mean, you never know how it will do with the public. That's something I don't think anyone has the magic formula to at all. I think you just have to do your best and always remember that as you make a record, there's still all those great records available for people to listen to. So you really have to believe that it's something worthy of stepping into that tradition, like the Beatles, Joni Mitchell, Dylan, Led Zeppelin.
What music do you listen to?
Of course, there's too many that I adore that have changed my life, that changed the atmosphere for me in the most majestic way. At the moment, I am really into Nick Drake, the English folk singer. I'm also really into Brad Moldo, the jazz pianist. And they're really doing it for me right now.
I love that you're still so humble, despite being 8 albums in.
Well, I think
after
you have
all those
to be.
years in the music business.
I think you have to be, but it's maybe I'll thank my parents for it because they raised me to be very humble. And also in Georgia, it's to be humble and not to show too much ambition is a very sort of traditional quality. Of course, I do have big dreams and I do have ambition, but you want to do it kindly. I think it's important.
Let your actions speak for you.
Yeah, of course.
As they say. Do you think your Georgian roots influence you in a big way on a daily basis?
I think so, yeah, I do. And there's something in Georgia which is at the table in Georgia, at the traditional feast. Poetry is always close by. And that can be in the form of the toasts that are made. Like the toasting at a Georgian table is taken very, very seriously. So my granddad, for example, he was fantastic at, reciting poetry and saying really beautiful things just at the family dinner table, something very normal and simple. And so I think that has influenced me in that I believe songs should have that level of beauty in the words and in the expressiveness of them. So yeah, I think it's very influential.
But we're talking about being humble, about the success and, not boasting with your ambition and so on. But you succeeded really, really early.
I did. I mean, I was working with a brilliant producer and songwriter called Mike Batt. And he was, very instrumental in helping me to achieve what I did, you know. And he creatively, he really was a big visionary. And it was amazing. We made 6 records together. We had a really fantastic collaboration. And then, of course, in the end, things, you know, I started to see things a little differently. And we are still very good friends, but we don't work together anymore. So now I work as a different type of artist. You know, I think you have to find your own way of having your creative voice.
Or sometimes to reinvent yourself.
I guess so, yeah. But reinvention is something that is often spoken about in the music industry by artists. To me, the idea of a great song that really is kind of like this invisible architecture is still the most important thing. So I think reinvention maybe happens naturally because you grow older, you are, you know, wiser, the cliche goes. But there's still like a thread for me, about the magic of music and the magic of songs.
You are talking about being wise and so on, but, well, you were really young and you had it all.
Yeah.
It sounds like a dangerous thing.
It can be a dangerous thing, yeah, as we have seen it. And I mean, I've seen some of the dangers too. But it hasn't put me off making records.
And this is a great thing.
Yeah, I do really love it. And, you know, the people that I work with in England, also the people that I work with in Georgia, you know, we recorded the orchestra in Tbilisi in Georgia with the Georgian Philharmonic Orchestra. There is some great talent in this industry. And despite the craziness of fame and huge success, I think it's so important to hold on to the great values of music and to just stay focused on that. And I think that is what helps me.
Because at the end of the day, you're as good as your latest album.
I guess so. That's the tough rules of the industry, yes.
As you're talking, I have an impression you're an old soul. A young person with a really old soul, which is absolutely not a bad thing.
Yeah, I love my tradition. There's a few times I've tried to be really hip and cool and young, but it doesn't seem to come very naturally to me. So
I cannot imagine it. I really can't.
I know, me neither.
So you stay true to yourself.
Yeah, I guess so. But you know, I think I don't know. Like as a Georgian girl, when I moved to the West, I always found it strange how important people found this idea of individualism and the self, you know? Like in Georgian culture, we're very based on community living, supporting each other, being there for each other. So it's a strange, as a Georgian girl who kind of believes in that kind of, family-based, community-based living and not being too worried about the self, being a pop star is a strange profession to have.
But it works well. It works well. Well, how many gigs have you played in your life?
I have lost count. I have lost count, yeah.
What was the weirdest thing that has
the weirdest
that has ever happened to you on tour?
On tour?
Yeah.
I think I would have to mention the concert Under the Water. This was a phone call that we got just after I released my first album. And it was actually the manager of a gas rig off the coast of Norway. And we heard that he was a big fan and that his gas rig was having a big anniversary. And they wondered if I would be up for performing at the bottom of the ocean in one of the legs of the gas rig. You know, and I'm a big adventure seeker. So I kind of thought, I got to say yes to this. It's too interesting to refuse. And I did it. So that was really strange. Me and my band, we went. We had to train in a helicopter because it's very dangerous to fly over those seas. We had to also train escaping the gas rig. And then once we got to the gas rig, it was a 10-minute lift down to the bottom of the gas rig. So yeah, but the show was good.
As you're an adventure seeker, it sounds like a perfect thing for you.
I loved it. It was pretty cool.
So if you own places like that, just let her know. Katie likes adventures. Well, it sounds great. But meeting people when you're on stage during a traditional gig may be really moving too.
Of course. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing to meet people. I have also had the great pleasure of singing with Queen. So as a kid, I was a huge fan of Queen. My uncles introduced me to their work when I was living back in Georgia, when I was like 6, 7, and I'd always play air guitar on the bed, like singing to Bohemian Rhapsody or Under Pressure or I Want to Break Free. And again, we got a phone call after the first album came out, and it was Brian May, and he had my manager's number, and he had heard that I was a big fan of Queen, and so he invited me to perform at a Nelson Mandela concert in South Africa. And this was crazy. I never imagined I'd sing
Which
with...
itself sounds really huge.
It was bizarre. It was just remarkable. It was so surreal. Very difficult to put it into words.
So you're buddies now with Brian?
Yes. I mean, they were one of the best.
How does it feel to witness your dreams coming true?
Well, it's a bizarre thing because what's extraordinary is you tell yourself this is happening, and you really try and let your senses kind of soak it in, like what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, because it's so out of your idea of reality that you kind of have to make yourself believe that this is really happening. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Mm-hmm. And calling your family, well, I'm going to be performing with Queen. No kidding.
You know what? My uncles were like, we have to come. And I said, okay, yeah, you have to come. So we booked tickets for my uncles too. They were the ones that introduced me to them to begin with. Mm-hmm. So they came also. And my uncle, actually, he's so afraid of flying. So he flew from Georgia to South Africa.
Ooh,
and he was very
a long
afraid.
Trip.
But for Queen, he did it.
I guess he doesn't regret it.
No, he doesn't at all. The picture that we took is still in his house.
Wow, that's a great story. A really nice thing. So what's your dream? What's your thing to achieve?
I would still like to keep making records. I really think record making, even though we have had so many phenomenal albums by many bands and artists for so many years, I still think there is so much to do. So that we have a lot of work to do in the music industry, so I look forward to just continuing as long as they let me.